समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
2 days after 15 people were killed and several were injured in a car explosion near the Red Fort on the 10th of November last year, the Union Cabinet, presided over by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, passed a resolution stating that the terror incident was perpetrated by quote-unquote anti-national forces. The resolution made no mention of a foreign country's involvement or cross-border terrorism. Operation Sindoor was only halted. It is still not over. And PM Modi had already drawn a red line for terrorists. Addressing the nation, he said that Operation Sindoor was a new normal in India's fight against terrorism. If there is a terrorist attack on India, a fitting reply would be given, the PM said, adding that India would not differentiate between the perpetrators and the sponsors of terrorism. That was the red line. 3 months later, the UN Security Council's counter-terrorism sanction monitoring team has revealed that Pakistan-based terror outfit Jaish-e-Mohammed was quote-unquote reported to be linked to the Red Fort blast. Ministry of External Affairs spokesman Randhir Jaiswal has suggested that the UN report was based on India's inputs. And I quote him here, "We have seen that they have taken on board India's inputs in regard to our concern on cross-border terrorism and also as to how we can strengthen global fight against terrorism." That was the MEA spokesperson who was responding to a question about the UN report linking the Pakistan-based outfit with the Red Fort blast. That came as news to the Indians. They learnt about Pakistan's involvement in the terror attack from a UN report. After the reference to the anti-national forces in the cabinet resolution, they did not hear any official authoritative voice about the involvement of the Pakistan-based terror outfit in the Red Fort blast. As Prime Minister Modi categorically declared, India no longer differentiates between the perpetrators of terror, JEM Jaish-e-Mohammed in this case, and the sponsor, Pakistan. The question is, why should Indians learn about it from the UN? The government must have had internal discussions about whether Pakistan crossed PM Modi's red line when the JEM carried out another terror attack, killing 15 people right in the Indian capital. They must have reasons to give inputs about it to the United Nations, but chose to keep them from the people back home. When it comes to national security, people have complete faith in whatever way the government decides to respond. People may be curious, but don't ask questions. Remember the Congress Party's criticism after PM Modi denied any Chinese incursion at an all-party meeting following the 2020 Galwan Valley clash? The opposition could not make an issue out of the PM's denial that was contrary to the MEA's stand then, because the people always stand solidly behind the government in times of national security crisis. They may, however, have reasons to feel let down if they learn about Pakistan's role in the Red Fort blast from the UN. I would not consider it such a big deal. Let's not expect the government to always share what it may consider sensitive information with citizens. What is actually disconcerting is the government's increasingly noticeable tendency to go for information blackout in matters which are not even related to national security. How would you explain the missive from the Prime Minister's office to the Lok Sabha Secretariat that questions related to the PM Cares Fund, the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund, and the National Defence Fund are inadmissible, as the Indian Express reported. Why on earth would a government want to block information about these funds, that too from members of parliament? The argument that these bodies are not under the control of the government does not hold water. Anyway, it has to be the Lok Sabha Speaker, not the government, who should decide which issues are admissible. And have you wondered why the government would not fill the constitutionally mandated post of the Deputy Speaker? It has been vacant since May 2019. The post conventionally went to the opposition, although it's not constitutionally mandated. The question about this vacancy is relevant again, given the growing trust deficit between the opposition and the chair in the Lok Sabha. There is no answer coming from the government. Again, remember the electoral bond scheme? Something the government said would ensure transparency in political funding? It was actually just the opposite. Meant to deny the people any information about the identities of donor companies and the beneficiary parties. The Supreme Court finally struck it down, calling it, and I quote, unconstitutional and manifestly arbitrary, unquote, and violative of the people's right to information. That was the Supreme Court. The government had fielded top lawyers of the country to shield the scheme. Well, Indians will never know if there was any quid pro quo between the beneficiary parties and the donors who contributed thousands of crores to them before the scheme was struck down. Amid a raging controversy over former Army Chief General M.M. Naravane's unpublished book, there are several reports now about the centre discussing a proposal to bring a 20-year cool-off period for retired public servants before they can write a book. It would reportedly include not just military officials, but other civil servants who held positions of power. One can understand the sensitivity about possible revelations by former military, intelligence, or security officials. But what's wrong if a former civil servant, say an ex-finance secretary, decides to share with citizens what went behind the demonetization decision? Or for that matter, behind a sovereign gold bond scheme? That aside, how many former civil servants who know what their political bosses do when in power will even be around at the age of 80 to write a book? Well, the retirement age is 60. So if you count the cool-off period, it becomes 80. So how many of them will be around at the age of 80 to write a book? And how many of such political bosses whose acts of omission and commission might be revealed in their books will be around or relevant enough to be subjected to public accountability? Thankfully, there is no official confirmation or denial of these reports yet. One can just hope that it's just a red herring. I can go on citing instances of the government's increasing reluctance to share information with the people. Why, for instance, is the government not fulfilling its commitment given in the parliament to grant statehood to Jammu and Kashmir? If there are security concerns, it should at least take the elected government into confidence if it doesn't want to tell the people. I am told by reliable sources that not a word of explanation or reason is proffered to Chief Minister Omar Abdullah every time he takes up this issue of statehood with the centre. Again, why did Prasar Bharati chairman Navneet Sehgal resign, or was asked to resign, with over a year left of his tenure? What did the Rohini Commission report on the subcategorization of OBCs recommend, and why is it gathering dust for 2.5 years since its submission to the President of India? What changed in Manipur that a new chief minister and 4 ministers were suddenly sworn in, and why have they not even been allocated portfolios for the last 2 weeks? There are a myriad of other questions with no answers forthcoming from the government. The Right to Information Act had been rendered toothless anyway. See how vehemently government lawyers have been opposing the disclosure of file notings in various courts, pleading that it discourages civil servants from giving candid opinions and exposes them to frivolous charges. Why would a civil servant fear writing in a file what should obviously be as per the law? But the government would not want the people to scrutinize its decision-making process. The Modi government is definitely not the first one with a tendency to be economical with truth. It's just more guarded and probably less sophisticated in implementation. I did not start this episode of Politically Correct because I saw something amiss about the government telling our UNSC monitoring team about Jaish Mohammed's involvement in the Red Fort blast, something that has not been shared officially with the people of India yet. My limited objective is to emphasize the point that it's good for the government to be open with the people when it comes to national interests. For instance, regardless of what the opposition says, most people know that the Indo-US trade deal is in national interest. The government can't be seen to be deflecting, like Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal was when he left it to the MEA to respond to a question on American claims about the purchase of Russian oil. Another thing the government can't afford here is whataboutery. When ministers counter the opposition's allegations about the trade deal by blaming previous governments for what they allegedly did against farmers. The trade deal is far too important. And obfuscation won't work when you are dealing with someone like US President Donald Trump, who is not given to diplomatic niceties and who loves to play to the gallery. It's however good to see ministers coming out to defend the trade deal, but the government must also remember how its sweeping, generalized defense of the 2015 land acquisition law and the 2020 farm laws cut no ice. It needs to engage with the people over the long-term benefits of the Indo-US trade deal. If the BJP Karyakartas are so efficiently deployed to go door to door in every village, to promote the Modi government's welfare programs and schemes ahead of elections, why can't the ruling party do the same about the Indo-US trade deal? The catch here is transparency in the finer details. As for the citizens' right to know the full truth, here is some solace for them. Even former Vice President Jagdeep Dhankhar is in the same boat. It has been almost 7 months since he resigned. As per the Vice President's Pension, Housing and Other Facilities Rules 1999, the government is obligated to provide him a Type 8 bungalow immediately. His close associates tell me that the government has not even contacted him about his post-retirement accommodation in the past 7 months. Jagdeep Dhankhar continues to stay at a friend's farmhouse on Delhi's outskirts. Nitin Nabin, on the other hand, was allotted a Type 8 bungalow within days after his appointment as the working president of the BJP, not even the president then. What's intriguing in the former VP's case is that the government has not even informed him why it is not allotting him the bungalow that he is entitled to. There rests my case about a commoner's right to know. That's all from me in this episode of Politically Correct. Thanks for watching.